Daughter of a Narcissistic Mother Chronicles. This is the first one that I'm going to do, and this is going to be more like an audio journal. So I'll be on here from time to time giving my experience of being raised by a narcissistic mother. There's not going to be anything fancy on the video or audio. It's just me talking, no script, no pre-written anything, just going off of what took place in my life, and hopefully it can help somebody else. My mother was 17 years old when she was pregnant with me. She was dating my dad. I don't even know how long they dated actually, but to make a long story short, he was 22 in college, had been in the Navy, and my mom was 17. She had been raised up in foster care. Her mother had her first child at 13. Speaking of my grandmother had her first child at 13, and so her mother wind up sending her to Mississippi. I forgot where my grandmother was originally at, but she was sent to Mississippi at 13, I guess, to have the baby. And they did that kind of thing back then. If a teenager or somebody got pregnant out of wedlock, then they would send them to down south or whatever. So anyway, my grandmother wound up having a child at 13, and she wound up actually having 13 pregnancies, but not all of them came to fruition. A few she lost, but she had multiple children. She had multiple children by different men throughout her lifetime, and she went through I would say the men that she dated were not the best of the selection. They beat her. They I guess used her for what they can get, and so she would have a child, leave the child with the daddy, move to run from the men that she had was getting beat by, have another child, that didn't work out, leave that child there. And so this was like a pattern. So by the time that my mom came along, she gave her up for to be put in foster care around 12 years old. But prior to that, my grandmother liked to have her men, and a few of those men molested my mother. Instead of my grandmother really getting rid of the men, there were times where she didn't even believe my mom, and so until she caught one in the act herself, and so then she finally got rid of him. But it seemed like my grandmother wanted her men over her own daughter. So she put my mother in foster care, and my mother basically grew up in foster care from the age of 12 to 17, 18 years old. Well, those are some very important years. So you're talking about someone that was put into a foster care system. Somehow my mother wound up in a mental hospital during that time, and they were giving her meds and all kind of things, and I guess she had a nervous breakdown or something. My grandmother would promise to come see her, or but she wouldn't come. She would come and give money and then leave, so my mother didn't get a chance to see her, but would see her as she was leaving in her uniform. So you can see that's kind of a lot of trauma that played into my mother developing into a narcissist. And one thing that I've learned about narcissists is that you can normally go back to the childhood and see what took place in order for them to develop into the narcissistic monsters that they are. And it does not excuse them, but having the education for us understanding what took place to cause it helps you to be able to heal. Well, by the time that my mom met my dad, and he wanted to finish college, but she couldn't get any help, any assistance from the state for us with me, so he wound up marrying her. I want to just say that it was a marriage of not love. It was a marriage of I'm just taking responsibility for my child. I'm not saying that they didn't love each other later, but that was not the initial reason they got married. My mother, she wanted to get out of foster care, so I was basically, and I have to be truthful, a means to an end to get a man to. And then she knew my dad would do the right thing, marry her, and that's how everything came about. Later on, my brother came 3 years into their marriage. Well, from the time that I can remember as a kid, my mother taught me how to cook, how to clean, how to, sew. She taught me those things. But what she could not teach me is how to love. And that was because you really can't give what you don't have, and then you can't give what you don't even feel about yourself. And I knew growing up that my mother didn't even feel good about herself. She was always insecure about her weight, took laxatives and tried to lose weight, and so it was always an insecurity, because she wouldn't even come up to my school because she didn't want the other kids making fun of me because of her weight. And so pretty much she was dealing with that insecurity. As a kid, I didn't feel good about myself because I really didn't have no one putting in me that I was beautiful or anything. At school I was like the ugly duckling. I was always teased because I didn't have the latest clothes, and my hair wasn't fixed right, and I had this ringworm that was on my face during that time, infantile, and so when it healed, it left a scar for a long time, and so I went through a lot of issues with low self-esteem, and I didn't have someone that would validate me to say, I love you, you're beautiful, let me help you. I really didn't have the mother that I felt that I could run to and tell mom, girls are teasing me. And even when I did tell her, she would throw it back up in my face. And that's the worst thing you could do to a child, is when a child comes to you and say, mom, girls are hurting me, teasing me at school because I don't know how to jump rope, or mom, the kids are making fun of me, or that the worst thing you could do is use that as a weapon against a child later on, because a child is already dealing with issues growing up. And so to have that parent compromise that trust, it actually damages the relationship later on. Well, I was thinking, was there ever a time when I felt really close to my mother? And I can't remember really feeling close to my mother, because I remember I learned early that I couldn't trust my mother. And what do I mean by that? Well, as a kid, I did devilish little things at time. I used to go to the store and like to steal candy bars. I used to love sweets, and so I did little devilish things. But those are things that kids do. So of course you're supposed to be reprimanded and stuff like that. But then there were times when the punishment did not justify the action that was done. And what do I mean by that? As a child, once I became a teenager, my mom, she would have me and my brother alternate doing dishes, and I always cleaned really good. I was a good cleaner. I would wash dishes, try to make sure there was no greasy dishes or anything like that. My brother, on the other hand, he would half wash dishes and leave water all over the sink and stuff like that. So my mother, what she would do is, when I was a teenager, she would find any excuse to find something that I did wrong. And when she found, just, I mean, she just basically creates something, and any little thing she can nitpick at me for, she would say, "Oh, you do another week of dishes." And it wasn't that I had done anything wrong. It was that because I cleaned so well, that, oh well, I'm gonna make you do it, but I'm really, it's not that I'm having you do it because you did something wrong. I'm having you to do it because you clean so well. So basically, my ability to clean caused me to be punished more than I should have been for any little thing. I remember my mom had bought me this diary, and I would write in my diary. And when even when I would be mad at her, I would write in my diary. And I remember one time I called her a witch in my diary because I was mad at her. And one day she told me to bring my diary down from my room, and she read it in front of the whole family. My dad, my brother, read my diary out loud. And when she got to the part where I called her a witch, I got whipped for it, for calling her a witch. Now, that was my personal diary, and she had no right to even read it. It was personal, but even when she did, she read it to the whole family. And then I got punished for what was in my own diary. And so I couldn't even put my own feelings to paper because my mother would punish me for it if she got a hold to it. So then what she did was, later on, she like, "Oh, I'm going to buy you another diary and I'll never read it again." Well, that was a lie she did. She did it again. So then I remember, as a kid, my mom taught me homeschool for a couple of years and then sent me to public school. And I didn't know how to jump rope and different things that other girls learn, because where we lived at, I didn't have no kids to play with, no girls to hang out with. And so the only type of social activity I had was just my brother, or when we went to church. But even at church, I was not really allowed to play because I had to sit in the pew and listen to the pastor. The only time I would get a chance to play with other kids at church was when we had a church social, and that was maybe every few months or something like that. So I really didn't have a social life with other kids my age. And that's kind of hard because kids need to be able to build social skills and everything. So outside of school, I didn't have any social life. So once I got in in high school, I was having this I didn't feel good about myself. And I remember one of my classmates, when we were adults, she told me, and I didn't even remember, she told me I was a sad child when I was at in my 7th, 8th, 9th grade year. She was like, "You were sad, and you were always sad because of your mother and how she treated you." And that gets back to, I don't even remember being happy to see her. I don't remember, a lot of hugs. I don't remember too many "I love yous." I remember punishments, but I don't remember, just having this mother that with unconditional love. It was always punishment. That's what I remember. Punishment. You better do this right. Having to be perfect. Having to be like a little adult. And so therefore, if I didn't get things right, then I would be punished. My parents, they had gone and got this leather strap made. Teachers used to use it back in the day at school when it was permitted to spank kids at school. They had went to this shoe place and had them make a leather strap. So the strap was used for me and my brother, whenever they felt that we did something wrong and deserved to be punished. But one time, my mom had wanted me to find a bag of rice in this trailer that was on the back of our property. And so they used to store food back there sometimes, and so my mom like, you need to find the rice. So I looked to try to find the bag of rice that was in his trailer, and I couldn't find it. And so I went and told her, I was like, Mom, I can't find the rice. So she tells me, you better go back out there and find that rice. And if you don't find that rice, then I have to send your dad out there, and then you're going to get a whooping. And my thing, I was 13 at the time, and my thing was, why should I get whipped because I can't find a bag of rice? And I looked everywhere. I could not find it. Nowhere. I looked through the cabinets. I mean, it was like I could not find that bag of rice for nothing. And I tried because I did not want to get whipped. Well, I couldn't find it. So I went back and told her I couldn't find it. So she tells my dad, go out there and find the rice. And if you find it, then you whoop her. So he went out, found the rice. And I got a whipping because I couldn't find a bag of rice. That's just one of the abuses, because that's what it is. No one. I shouldn't have got whipped because I couldn't find a bag of rice. My mom, she would like sometimes punish me for things that happened in the house. I remember one time my brother had cut his hair, and it was his first time cutting his hair, and I laughed at him because it looked funny, and this was at home. This wasn't out in public. It was not out in public or anything, and so this was behind closed doors. But what she did was, she's like, oh, you think that's funny? So what she did, she went and got one of her skirts. Now my mom, I'm a 14-year-old, girl. She went and got one of her skirts, and it probably was like a 20 size 22 skirt. Mind you, it was twice my size. She got one of her skirts and made me put it on, and told me I had to put a pin in it and wear it to school. She did that to humiliate me at school, knowing that I already had issues with the kids because I didn't have the latest clothes. But she did that to humiliate me. And so I went to school with this oversized skirt on, and she thought that was funny just because I laughed at my brother at home. One of the things narcissists do is they like control. They like to intimidate kids. My mom, she did something else that, was very humiliating. One day I had cooked some grits, and I was 14 years old. And with grits, grits can become lumpy. If you've ever cooked grits, you have to constantly stir them because they can become lumpy. Well, I'm 14 years old. I'm still learning how to cook. I wasn't a Betty Crocker or anything. I was just learning. At 14 years old, you're not perfect in cooking. She was an adult, so she had years of experience on me. But I was 14 years old. What she did was, I had cooked some grits and I had cooked some other things for breakfast. I don't recall. It's been so long ago. But I put the grits, on everybody's plate and along with whatever else I cooked, and sat at the table. It was me, my mom, and my brother, my dad. I know he probably was at work. So we start eating, and my brother, he spits the grits out on his plate. And like, they got lumps in it. So my mother, she tells me, you eat those grits that he just spit out his mouth. I couldn't believe she told me that, because I was like, how can you do that? I looked at her and I couldn't believe she made me eat the regurgitated grits that came out of my brother's mouth. And that was humiliating, to say the least. It was wrong. it was child abuse. But see, I was scared of her. I didn't, because and not only did she tell me to eat it, she told me I better not tell my dad. And if I did, I was going to get in trouble. I was going to get a whooping. I should have told my dad. I should have told somebody else in the family. I should have told my teachers. I should have sang like a canary when she did that. I should have refused to even do it. But I wasn't strong enough then. Narcissists, they know how to manipulate you. They like to have their control over weak people. In my case, I was a child, so I was weak in the sense of not being able to stand up to her because of my age, because of the authority that she had over me. And so they will abuse their position of authority. I never said anything until 14 years later, when I was 28 years old, and I finally told my dad what took place. And he seemed like he couldn't hardly believe it, and so he asked my brother, did it happen? And my brother did verify and said it happened. And then he told her about it, and she claimed that she didn't remember, that it never happened. And then even if it did, so what? It was other things that she had done that was good, that where that shouldn't even matter. She never said I was sorry. She never said I was wrong. She never apologized. It was like I was wrong for even mentioning it. And see, that's what narcissists do. They will deflect, and their wrongdoings, when you mention it to them, they make it seem like you're the one that's in the wrong for even daring to mention their bad behavior. There's going to be more to these Daughter of a Narcissist Chronicles that I'm going to be doing. And why am I doing it? Because for so long I was made to feel like I would be wrong if I talked about things, because after all, it's your mother. After all, it's your family. After all, you're supposed to keep quiet and always show them in the best light. But then you're the one that's suffering. You're the one that suffers from depression. You're the one that's trying to think what went wrong in my life. Why am I feeling like damaged goods? Why is it that I don't feel that I'm worthy of being loved? What is wrong? And the thing is that when you look back over your life, and just like a doctor have to go through your medical history, you have to go through your history as well when it comes to trying to figure out what took place to bring you to where you are today. If you're suffering from self-sabotage, what happened to you? If you're suffering from low self-esteem, who was the one that made you feel that you weren't worth anything? If you're suffering from not being able to feel like you're deserving of love, who didn't love you who should have? And a lot of this stems from when you were a child. So I'm not gonna stay silent anymore. I'm gonna do these chronicles, and I'm gonna talk about things that took place with me. And if I can help just one person to receive healing based upon being able to listen to someone who actually went through it, then that's all that matters. Because at the end of the day, narcissists don't care about you. So you have to care about you enough to get the healing that you need. This is the first of many chronicles. Daughter of a Narcissistic Mother.